Open world games have become one of the most popular genres of game design in the past 5 years. What initially started out as an interesting idea that was always around even way back entered the public consciousness as revolutionary titles like Grand Theft Auto and Minecraft brought the idea to the forefront, leading to the creation of games that come once in a generation. With this increasing attention, mainstream developers even spun the idea into genres that the concept of open world wasn't really thought of. One good case of this being Nintendo releasing Super Mario Odyssey, Zelda Breath of the Wild, Pokemon Scarlet and Violet, and to some extent Legends Arceus, games that have some semblance of open world exploration. Following this trend, Genshin Impact was marketed as an open-world action RPG, one of the first, if not the first high-profile open-world gacha, a category of games notorious for its very restrictive amount of gameplay, starkly contrasting the seemingly endless amount of hours you can throw at games like Skyrim or No Man's Sky. And while Genshin still adheres to the notion of only being able to do a set amount of things per day, especially in the realm of account progression, the game is by and large an open-world environment, one where players can explore, discover, battle, and behold at their own pace. With the inherent disparity between open worlds and gachas, however, cracks would definitely show in the game's design. Trying to combine a genre that's known for virtually limitless play with one that's known for extremely limited play is like water and oil. It's not impossible, but pulling it off is a very delicate matter, and that's what brings me to our topic for today. I wanted to look into Genshin Impact's world exploration and discuss a few things that have been on my mind about it. Currently, the world of Teyvat features 4 distinct countries available to players: Mondstadt, Liyue, Inazuma, and Sumeru, and the subregions corresponding to each one. While there are still 3 more areas, Fontaine, Natlan, and Snezhnaya, Teyvat has to be one of the most biodiverse worlds I've seen in a long time. From a spectacle standpoint, a lot of detail and care was put into making the world environment, as if everything was done by hand and not procedurally generated. Without even looking at the map, you can easily tell if you're in Sumeru or Inazuma or Liyue just from the landmarks and biomes present in each one. It helps establish a sense of world identity, making your gameplay experiences more memorable as you go from one to the next, and I can only imagine it will get even more diverse as you have access to the rest of the world. Gameplay-wise, there's a streamlined order in how you unlock access to each area. To some, this may eliminate the idea of an open world being all about zero limitations and letting the player do whatever they want, wherever they want, whenever they want, kind of like Minecraft. Even so, what makes us feel like an open world is the experience of continued discovery. Progressing through the main Archon quest will merely give you a surface-level understanding of each nation or significant landmarks like Dragonspine and Konomiya or the Chasm. Aside from that, there's a bevy of other things you can do afterwards to check out all there is. To incentivize a deeper level of exploration, rewards and crucial elements to account progression are strategically placed in areas that are far off the main story path, key of which being chests. There has to be something like over 1,000 chests scattered throughout all of the game's available content so far, and when you account for the amount of primo gems, mora, and items you can get from them, that can definitely add up. Other things include world bosses that drop items necessary for character ascension. They're usually placed in areas that contain their own puzzles or questline you have to complete in order to unlock said area. For example, 2 of Inazuma's world bosses, Thunder Manifestation and the Golden Wolf Lord, are stationed in Seidai and Tsurumi Island respectively. Both areas are off limits at the start, so before you can fight them, you have to complete their individual questlines, which can take anywhere from 30 minutes to several hours. Specific puzzles can also permanently transform the environment, granting access to more of that specific area. On occasion, you'll find yourself trying to reach a teleport waypoint or some spot that's completely immersed underwater. And since Genshin has no underwater diving, you'll need to find whatever mechanism allows access to those areas. Conceptually, Genshin's open world experience is among the best I've seen, a statement that's even more impressive considering it's a gacha game where developers infamously lean back on reused mechanics or superficial elements and call it a day. It's definitely satisfying to see more and more of the world as you go along and get rewarded for doing so. As an anecdote, I had a great time checking out Konomiya when it first came out, and despite how long it was, completing the 3 Realms Gateway Offering event felt pretty fun since it gave you a reason to check out the entire dungeon beyond the Coral Defenders. Not the biggest lore guy out there, I like to save that for anime, novels, and movies, but I didn't mind it since there were so many items to get and enemies to fight. All that being said, Genshin's exploration is not without flaws, very serious ones. In the past, I've made videos on new player lockout, endgame content, and the problem with events. In all of them, I briefly touched on account progression and how the way it's designed can negatively impact a player's ability to enjoy the game. Something that's been highly debated between groups of players ever since day one is how Genshin is meant to be played. As an open world game, specifically an open world gacha game, that just comes with the territory. Gachas are designed to be very grind heavy, making content just as, if not more challenging than the means of completing it at the time so as to pressure you into spending money to close that gap. That's where all the sweaty gamer whales come from. On the flip side, Genshin is also an open world with a heavy emphasis on narrative lore and storytelling. Depending on which school of thought you subscribe to, Genshin's world exploration can either be a very rich and fulfilling adventure or a tedious chore that's reminiscent of filler episodes in a Shonen Jump anime. For the sake of this video, I'll be looking at it from the lens of an action RPG enthusiast who's picking up Genshin for the first time and has a modicum of experience playing gacha games, just to keep things consistent. Going back to what I said earlier about exploration being mostly linear with some detours on the side, the chronological order of progression that you're expected to go through is Mondstadt first, Liyue second, Inazuma third, and Sumeru fourth. In my new player lockout video, I expressed concern about the order in question causing a lot of problems due to the fact that characters from those regions can only be upgraded using materials from that region which are not obtainable from outside that region. Fortunately, given that Sumeru is connected to Liyue by land, you can technically access it very early on after you complete the tutorial quest, get adventure rank 20, and can go into Liyue. However, to get through the Sumeru Archon quest, you do have to finish Inazuma first, as there are several plot-relevant events that happen in Inazuma that foreshadow events that happen in Sumeru. Moreover, the canonical progression of Traveler's Adventure also follows this sequence. The Fabulous Fungus Frenzy in version 3.2 saw Yae Miko touring through Sumeru and is already acquainted with Paimon and Traveler based on her conversation with them. Essentially, while the order of accessibility is not uniform, there's an implicit suggestion for you to play the game in a set permutation, bringing me to the first problem with Genshin's exploration. 1. It puts an increasing amount of coercion on new players and even veteran ones to quickly explore and unlock everything as fast as possible, which can get overwhelming. Gacha games foster player loyalty by eliciting a fear of missing out, intentionally restricting how much they can do per day, week, and/or month for 2 reasons. First, it buffers their progression, meaning they can't just binge the entire game in one day and burn out quickly. Second, it pressures you into logging on every day and playing for a set amount because if you don't, you permanently lose whatever resources or materials you would have gained that day. It's not like players can take a break for 6 months, then come back, spend a few hours, and catch up on what they've missed out on. There's a finite amount of stuff you can get per day, so if you fall behind, you will always be behind. Granted, Genshin is not a competitive game. There's no high score leaderboard for raids or PvP mode. Even so, the feeling that you're missing out on stuff can drive players to become addicted to logging on every day, whether or not they progress all that much, if at all that day. To draw a parallel between Genshin and Minecraft for a moment, Minecraft allows you to progress at your own pace because there's nothing hamstringing the amount of things you can get done in one sitting. If you want to collect 500 diamonds, beat the Ender Dragon, kill the Wither, get a full set of protection 4 Unbreaking 3 Netherite armor, then you can do that. Boom, you beat the game in one day. Now imagine if there was a hard cap on resources in Minecraft. You can only get like 64 iron, 16 gold, 16 diamonds, etc. per day, and you have to wait until the next reset before you can collect more. Even if you don't need that many resources per day, it plants the seed of what if in your head. What if I need that many diamonds in the future? I may not need them now, but what if I do later? Normally, you wouldn't have to worry about not playing the game for a week because you can get stacks and stacks of diamonds in one day if you want. The potential supply far outstrips the demand and even future demand. Genshin is the inverse. How this pertains to exploration lies in the way it ties to account progression. Earlier I mentioned that certain areas are only available to you after you finish a quest or a prerequisite of some shape or form. But if you're just starting out or you haven't gotten around to unlocking that area, you have to go through all the stuff that comes before just to get access to it. Say you managed to pull Raiden Shogun and you're brand new to the game. To ascend or past level 40, you have to finish all of Mondstadt's Archon quest, then all of Liyue's Archon quest, then a significant portion of Inazuma's Archon quest, then the Seidai Island quest in order to get not only the Amakumo fruit to Ascender, but also fight the Thunder Manifestation world boss. There is no other alternative. What you'll essentially have is a dead prize unit in your roster that you won't be able to use for quite a few days, if not weeks, depending on how fast you want to binge through the game. Even if you're someone who wants to take their time and enjoy the game, the fact that one of your first 5 stars is completely unusable for a good 20 to 30 hours of gameplay, if not more, can leave a bad taste in your mouth. It's like having a starter Pokemon that you can't evolve until after you collect all 8 gym badges. Do not try to bring up Mystery Dungeon, that game is nowhere near as evolution heavy as the main series, but that's how it feels. On the subject of finite progression, like other gachas, Genshin does not allow you to make up for lost time. Resin can't be stored for future use, barring 5 condensed resins, so you can't save up in advance or something. Believe me, I wish you could. You always hear about players who save up materials for an upcoming 5 star so they can instantly max level them when they come out, but that's assuming you even have access to those materials. Every day you miss puts you that much further behind in progressing your account or whatever characters you have. Players are then forced to make a choice, either binge through however many hours it takes to unlock the entire game, likely ruining their experience of the game compared to someone who took their time, went through things slowly, and explored the story, or actively sacrificed account progression to take their time, also likely ruining their experience because if they care at all about progression, and most if not all RPG players do, It really sucks to miss out on stuff, especially if there's no way to make up for it later. Again, Sumeru fortunately doesn't have this issue, so I'm hopeful that it won't be as big of a problem for the other regions too. If you pulled Nahida, you can start working on her pretty early by walking to Sumeru, getting stuff for her, then going back to wherever you are in the story. I guess it really only applies to Inazuma for the time being, but even for Sumeru, there's a lot of stuff you can't access until you do the actual story. For example, the weekly boss. If you want to level up talents to their highest rank, you need to complete the necessary questline, and that lets me transition to the second problem. 2. There's a huge difference between being given the choice to explore and being forced to. Genshin's an open world game that actively mandates you to check out every nook and cranny of Teyvat if you want to progress further. Open world games draw a lot of different players. A large majority of them don't really care to 100% unlock the game, they just want to partake in combat or build their units. Because Genshin intertwines world and story exploration with player progression, you'll more likely than not be obligated to explore every part of the world, especially if you want to min-max your progression. This is particularly a problem in relation to events, which usually demand specific areas to be unlocked in order to collect rewards that are only obtainable through events. The Crown of Insight is an item that's not regularly obtainable, only a set number is given to you through one-time quests. Outside of that, you have to complete the flagship event of every version. The problem is, most of those flagship events are full of unskippable cutscenes and dialogue, usually followed by running around the world doing who knows what. And if you didn't unlock those areas beforehand, you also have to do that. See, the beauty of gachas is that most of the time the story takes place independently from the gameplay past a certain point. Obviously, to help you understand the basic gist of how the game plays out, you have to at least go through some of the early story. But after a while, you can sort of do whatever the hell you want if you don't feel like playing the story. Events are usually instance things, as in they're not actually in the world. They're like a separate area or button you press to go to, no matter where you are in your progression, and the event quests never require you to unlock areas in the main world beforehand. You can complete all the event missions within the event itself. That's how it should be. Events are time limited, therefore anything that restricts the player's ability to complete them is objectively not good to have. Genshin, on the other hand, inextricably ties the story to the game's progression, so if you want to progress through the game, you have to progress through the story, as most of the events pertain to wherever the latest story is at. Occasionally, they might release an event that brings you back to one of the older regions, like how they revisit Liyue for Chinese New Year through Lantern Rite, or how they went back to Dragonspine in version 2 as a continuation of the Dragonspine event in version 1. But most of the time, the game expects you to be up to date on the story, only rarely deviating away from that through standalone events like the recent Ballads and Brews in version 3.1. The Test of Courage event in 3.3 takes place in Inazuma, so new players can't even do this one unless they made it to Inazuma. To alleviate that tedium, Genshin added an intro skip button to those flagship events to allow players to partake without having to complete their prerequisite Archon or character quests at the expense of spoilers. Yet that's merely a band-aid solution, it doesn't address the root problem. I'm not saying it's a bad thing to intersect story with gameplay, most games do so brilliantly, but at least to me, a day one player, after doing it for so long, so many times, it feels like nowadays having to spend several hours going through quests, dialogue just to be able to level up a character gets really mind-numbing. I find myself putting off leveling up new characters or getting materials because I don't want to sit through hours of dialogue. I was fine with it for Mondstadt and Liyue when we still had the honeymoon phase, but now it's just tedious. I know the Sumeru story was pretty solid, but I don't like that you're forced to play through it for in-game rewards. The tricky part is that Genshin is very loyal to its own universe. Its events and questlines give us more opportunities to learn about the characters, the world, and the cultures. It's part of what makes this game so appealing. You don't just teleport to a hub world and fight bosses to get materials for your characters, you actively immerse yourself in the world to improve them. At the same time, I still think players should be given a choice. That's what open world games are all about. Freedom. Genshin markets itself as an open world game on the surface, and it is, but the fine print gives off the impression that it isn't. Combine that with gacha mechanics and finite progression and it can make things more onerous than it has to be. Basically, the moral of this video is, let us skip cutscenes, there's just too much dialogue, miHoYo, please. I get that Genshin's a very story-focused game, but please, let that story happen separately from the progression, or give players the option to skip it. Most of it is just banter between characters anyway. But that's a rant for another day. Let me know your thoughts on game exploration in the comments down below, whether you agree or disagree with my points. For now though, if you enjoyed the video, I'd appreciate it if you left a like and subscribed. Also, follow me on Twitter at Vars, join my Discord server, and check out my other discussion videos if you haven't yet. But till next time, thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you again soon in the next one. Take care.